his agenda, what it means for the race. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Igor, yesterday it was a summit of sorts. It was confirmed that Hillary Clinton met privately with President Barack Obama. No real word on exactly what they talked about, but they said that they met and talked over a range of issues. Moments after leaving the White House, or moments after the White House confirmed the meeting, Clinton put out a little tweet, praised the Affordable Care Act, talked about how good it's been because yesterday was the 5th birthday of the ACA, or Obamacare.
Oh, I know. You don't have to tell me, Peter. I was there from the beginning.
You were one of the earliest, I understand.
You know, I have a poster in my house celebrating. I was going to take a picture yesterday and I forgot. Celebrating the 5th, the day it was signed.
Really?
Yes.
Look at you.
Yeah.
How interesting. At home with Mr. Volsky.
That's right. Special segment on the show coming up later.
We go to Salt Lake City, where yesterday Utah became the state to allow firing squads for executions.
It's about time.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's been too long.
The idea here is that there are, with lethal injection, there have been so many controversies surrounding lethal injection, how well it's worked, that they now said that this is the backup
It only makes
lethal
sense.
injection drugs are available.
It only makes sense. I understand.
Why not bring back the gallows?
Well,
move to the future.
And we might have to.
Yeah, right. Clearly. You know, marijuana is big business, Igor. It's big, big business. Everybody's having to talk about marijuana now. People are having their reporters covering it, the business of it, the strain, all this stuff.
They're not just talking about it, Peter.
Well, they're not just talking about it. That's a good point. Well, Forbes is now covering marijuana, the legal marijuana industry, focusing on entrepreneurs who are fueling it, and they have hired a new reporter, the marijuana correspondent. Her name is Julie Weed.
Oh.
No way.
I am not kidding.
Oh.
Her name is her destiny.
Destiny.
She was born to do it.
Go follow Julie Weed. Yes, the job she was born to do.
Is it Y? I mean, is it W-I-E-D or W-E-E-D?
It's W-E-E-D, as in weed. As in, let's go smoke some weed.
Skeptical that this is her real name.
I think this job.
There you go. You know, another person who thinks they're born and destined for greatness. Yeah, like that transition.
You're
Nice.
so good at your
Well, you know, I'm
segues.
crisp this morning. What can you say? Ted Cruz, of course, who announced yesterday at Liberty University his run for the presidency, the first Republican, the first candidate of any major party to throw in the ring. Hillary, incidentally, was at the Center for American Progress, which is, of course, where Think Progress is housed, where I work. They're giving participating in a roundtable conversation about some of the struggles and challenges of urban America and empowering urban areas in this country. So it was kind of an interesting compare and contrast. There he was, surrounded by thousands of Liberty University students who were required to come to this assembly. They're there every week for these kinds of gatherings. Many of them are, of course, religious in nature. But this featured Mr. Ted Cruz, who rose to, I think, a lot of prominence, of course, over his attempts to and success in shutting down the government over Obamacare when he gave a 23-hour filibuster on the floor of the Senate. Yes.
Really something to be proud of.
But really came out swinging right when he was elected in 2012, endeared himself to a lot of different conservative and Tea Party groups who said, this is our guy. He stands for what we believe in. He's no Mitt Romney changing his position on every other issue. And they believed he could be the future of the party. And to me, I have to give him a lot of props here. I think that announcing early makes a lot of sense for him. He hasn't been getting a lot of the buzz of some of the more established candidates. It's going to allow him to really get into that conversation and define and expose himself to a much larger voting bloc.
And can I also say, I think it was kind of, honestly, refreshing that someone just ran for president. They didn't have an exploratory
there's none of this, exactly.
They didn't have their political action committee 3 years ago leading up to this. They're not toying with the idea. They just, I'm running for president.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening for real. And what I appreciated also, Peter, is the fact that he laid out a pretty clear agenda. I mean, if you vote for this guy, you know what he stands for. We've heard a lot of this before, but he framed it pretty well. And I want to go through some of these points because I think this sets up nicely the conversation of, A, how will he impact the Republican primary race, which is, I think, the primary danger of his candidacy. And B, what does it mean in terms of the general election, if anything? So, as you would expect in Liberty University, there's a lot of reference to God and God shaping and changing and saving his life, the life of his parents. He, of course, was born in Canada to an American mother and a Canadian and a Cuban father. He's a naturalized born citizen. He's eligible to run for president, most believe. We'll see. It's never been challenged in the courts. But the understanding is he's okay. He's good to go. But here he is yesterday laying out one of his goals, which is, of course, to make sure everybody who wants a job has a job. Here he is laying out what he's going to do for America's young people.
Instead of the joblessness, instead of the millions forced into part-time work, instead of the millions who've lost their health insurance, lost their doctors, have faced skyrocketing health insurance premiums, imagine in 2017, a new president signing legislation repealing every word of Obamacare.
Yeah, and that's the other part of this. This announcement was made on the 5th anniversary of Obamacare, as we mentioned. He promises, of course, to repeal the law in its entirety. He also called for the abolishment of the IRS.
Instead of a tax code that crushes innovation, that imposes burdens on families struggling to make ends meet, imagine a simple flat tax.
So easy.
That lets every American fill out his or her taxes on a postcard.
No, listen.
Imagine abolishing the IRS.
Who fills out postcards anymore?
Right? What's a postcard?
What's a postcard? I mean, he should have said an app. Yeah. On an app. Imagine, this is what I don't understand. Who says postcard? Because that's what you really want to do, is take a postcard and in very small print, fill out your taxes and then send it to something that's not the IRS. Right. I don't know who you're sending this postcard to process the postcard. Postcard? I haven't seen a postcard. Do they sell postcards? Do they cut paper to the size of postcards anymore?
I think he wants to bring back telegrams, too.
If you're like a school child and you go on a field trip, they usually sell postcards in the gift shop.
I mean, today's equivalent of the postcard is really like a tweet, right? So tweet your taxes. That should be the new flat tax idea. Tweet your taxes to...
taxes.
Cruz no IRS at Cruz no IRS, and maybe someday you'll get your tax return. Who knows? But listen, this flat tax idea has been around for a while, since Steve Forbes in 1996, writing a whole campaign on it, and Cruz doesn't have the details yet, but we'll get into some of this with Arthur Delaney later on in the program.
This is what I find so fascinating about Cruz, is he's such a throwback politician, right? Like, the time has kind of come and gone for these politicians to just throw these big ideas out and not back them up at all. Right? We've learned to hold people accountable. We've learned to hold people and politicians accountable and make them explain just what the hell they're talking about. Cruz thinks that he could just throw this rhetoric out and these big ideas with really no plan as to how that's going to get done.
And no experience in getting it done.
No experience in getting it done.
And this.
And by the way, old ideas that no one's really all that interested in anymore.
Yes.
Getting rid of gay marriage? Great. I mean, how far behind the curve is he on that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess his most progressive idea, if you were to characterize it as that, would be his pretty strong resistance to all of the NSA wiretap surveillance. He mentioned this in his speech, and it's probably the only kind of common ground where he has with some Democrats on this issue. Maybe not the administration, but some
not those Democrats,
some other Democrats who have a problem with all of this wiretapping. But I'll just say this: obviously, if you look at a lot of the models out there, and you kind of game out what could happen in a primary, in a very crowded primary, it's pretty clear that Ted Cruz, who doesn't have the political experience, doesn't have the staff, the reputation in the Republican Party, probably won't be able to raise the money needed, isn't a viable presidential candidate. We can all say that. We can all agree on it. And I know there's a lot of Democrats who also think, well, he is the best thing to ever happen to Hillary Clinton because he creates this clear contrast in policy. He's so crazy that voters are going to trip over themselves trying to vote for her out of sheer joy that she's not Ted Cruz. But I'll say this. I think his real power in this election, and the reason why he's running, is because he wants to move the Republican Party to the right. Mm-hmm. And he's setting the standard for what a Republican platform will look like, for what and how Republicans will respond to certain proposals, and what kind of plans they themselves will put forward. We see this happening all the time with a candidate like Mitt Romney, who used to support healthcare reform, used to support a women's right to choose, wasn't a big anti or pro-gun guy, had to walk all of that back when he ran for president twice. And the same thing is going to happen to people like Jeb Bush, to people like maybe Chris Christie, Scott Walker, as they get into this race and they understand that Ted Cruz is to the right of everybody in the party and is also slowly pulling everybody along with him because he has the support of the base in Iowa and South Carolina. And if you're going to win the Republican primary and become the Republican candidate, you need those voters. So if Ted Cruz is kind of out cruising you with those guys, that's patented, by the way.
Ooh.
Yeah, thank you.
Cruising with a Z.
Yeah, with a Z.
Yeah.
You have a problem. And so maybe you're not going to meet him on every issue, but you're going to try in your rhetoric, in the way you approach kind of your campaign in general, you're going to want to peel some of those voters away. And I think the more you move during the primary to appeal to those conservative voters, the harder it is for you to move back towards the middle in the general. And if you're elected, to govern like a sensible, reasonable person rather than someone who just reacts to everything in a knee-jerk kind of ideological fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So lots more on Ted Cruz here on this Tuesday edition of Bill Press. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. We want to hear from you. What do you think about the senator from Texas? Back in a moment.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000. I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately I've been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Press Show.
All right, 28 minutes after the hour. Igor Volsky here, sitting in for Bill Press. Arthur Delaney of the Huffington Post, he's joining us here next as we continue our special coverage of Ted Cruz's presidential announcement.
Cruz Watch 2015.
Exactly. 866-55-PRESS if you want to be part of the conversation. Are you afraid of this guy? Should we be scared? Will he be our next president? Is he getting too much attention? Call us. Let us know here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. There was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
The Nation magazine and lots of other people. Here, Igor Volsky on The Bill Press Show, 33 minutes after the hour, as we continue to discuss what a Ted Cruz candidacy could mean for us all. If it's Tuesday, of course, we're joined by the one and only Arthur Delaney here every Tuesday at 6:30, right before me, kind of my opening act, I like to call him.
Yeah, but you know what, Igor, I've noticed you've been getting here earlier and earlier, and now look what happened.
Read in, exactly. Yeah, you see, you get here a little early, look what they do for you.
I thought you were trying to step on my turf. But it turns out you're stepping on Bill's turf.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a sneaky one. Well, listen, we're going to get into some of Ted Cruz's economic proposals, shall we say. But first, Kevin from Chicago wants to weigh in. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Hey, hi, guys. How you doing? Yeah, I mean, Ted Cruz, I guess his father's influence rubbed off more. He must think he's going to become the president of Cuba. Because, you know what, I mean, to make such ridiculous statements of signing legislation to eliminate Obamacare and the flat tax, I mean, he knows that can't happen. Romney said the same thing. You know, I mean, you got to get a law, it's got to go through Congress, pass the filibuster. I mean, it's just nothing but pure red meat rhetoric. to go out there and get these crazy people on the right, on the far right, all excited about it. And you're right, I agree. He's attempting to move the needle further to the right. But you know what? Quite frankly, I hope he's the candidate. I mean, it'll be a cakewalk for the Democrats if he's the candidate, because it's going to be hard to expose him for the fraud that he is.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Hoping he's the candidate so that there's this clear choice between the Democrat, whoever that might be, Ted Cruz, the Republican Party. I guess one of those choices is the economic agenda, and Ted Cruz actually did a fairly sound job of laying it out, that his main goal here is to do some kind of vague tax reform, but also to institute a flat tax, getting rid of all the different brackets, having just one at some percentage that has yet to be determined, probably getting rid of a lot of the deductions, too, because that's like a classic flat tax. You have one rate, you get rid of all the deductions that people use and like, and that way you simplify the entire process. And as he says, you can fill out your tax return on a postcard and then send it to something that's not the IRS to process it for you. And
probably
maybe
still the government.
Yeah, some government entity. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's like the Heritage Foundation can contract to run it, or Cato. I'm not sure. But he's going to have some kind of arrangement. But this isn't a new phenomenon. I mean, the flat tax has been around since at least 1996, when Steve Forbes gave it a big old push in the presidential campaign. Is this just the recycled idea here, or is Ted Cruz bringing something new to the table?
Well, there's not much detail to it, so I think it's fair to consider it recycled. But it's appealing. It's tax season, and I think everyone
just in time.
Everyone agrees that our tax system is incredibly aggravating, but it's not aggravating because of the progressive tiers of taxation. It's complicated. It's the deductions that make it so complicated, that make it so convoluted. And he's talking about a flat tax, but he's not talking about a pure flat tax. If you're going to keep mortgage interest and charitable deductions already, right off the bat, you're not going all the way. And the concern is this is going to be massively regressive. It's going to be a huge tax hike on poor people who, instead of paying 10% on their, the first few dollars that they earn, it'll be set at whatever the flat tax rate is. So that's the concern with a flat tax, that it's massively regressive and a huge favor to the wealthiest people.
Now, he's selling it as something that will help fight income inequality.
Right.
Which to me is really kind of astounding, is that you would be imposing let's say 17% or 15%. And of course, where if the top income bracket is now what, 34, 35, where are we?
It's 39.5.
Because it went up. That's right, 39.5. Yes. Like we forget it went up. My God. 39.5. So if those folks at the top income brackets now pay 17%.
Right.
And everybody else is paying 17% who paid a lot less than that or didn't pay federal taxes at all.
They're getting whacked.
Well,
so it's kind of a hide the ball proposal at this point, sort of like what we saw with the Romney campaign, where they made all these promises, but when you tried to fit them together, you didn't come out with a tax scheme that raised the same amount of money. So when they promised that they were going to raise the same amount of money, you had to assume that they would fill it in on higher taxes on certain people. So yeah, it doesn't fight income inequality if rich people are paying lower taxes. But what Ted Cruz would say is that, but we're going to take away some of the more egregious loopholes and deductions that rich people use. I don't think most tax analysts actually consider that a plausible way of imposing higher taxes on rich people. Or maybe he would say poorer Americans, through standard deductions, I don't know, would have negative income tax as a result of this, and you'd send them
like a credit or some sort.
And that could be a way of through a flat tax with those kind of deductions, you could do away with other benefits for poor people. For instance, the earned income tax credit,
and
just
the
have
worst.
and just have the tax system shoveling money to them. But I think almost all of the flat tax, or we're talking about marginal flat tax proposals, it's basically a favor to the people who are in the much higher income brackets. And remember, it's not the progressivity of our tax code that makes it complicated. It's not the tiers of higher tax rates on higher levels of income that are just so confusing to accountants and regular people. It's all this other stuff, and each one you would try to abolish. For instance, the mortgage interest deduction, you will be met by massive lobbying by powerful special interests, namely the real estate industry.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of listening to Ted Cruz at an Iowa agriculture event where all of the candidates came down and talked about, of course, ethanol subsidies, a big issue out in Iowa. And he took what I thought was a pretty strong stance and said he's against ethanol subsidies, which is, of course, in line with this idea of we're not going to pick winners and losers. Washington is going to be, is going to be kind of fair to everybody, which is a big line on the right and has been for many years. But it raises this question, as you point out. There are industries now, like the oil and gas industry, for instance, a big industry in his home state of Texas, that reaps a lot of benefit from the current tax code, who would fight changes that would potentially eliminate these deductions and subsidies. And so I want to ask him what he thinks about that, if we should get rid of oil and tax subsidies and deductions and all that for those companies. And I wonder what he would say. It's something that, of course, impacts his state. It's something that his voters directly benefit from. Certainly his donor base in Texas directly benefits from. And if it because it's been, certainly on the Democratic side, it's been a talking point for a long time. Obama has tried to use it to pay for all kinds of things in his budget. Do you feel like now that Cruz is kind of setting the conversation about a flat tax, a more fair tax system, more transparent, easier to understand tax system, getting rid of some of these deductions, will Republicans kind of come on board with this idea of maybe getting rid of some of these kind of big giveaways and big parts of the tax code that benefit certain industries that are already doing so well?
Well, yeah, Republicans are for tax reform. Supposedly, every candidate...
Very loosely,
everybody's got to be for tax reform. I mean, the tax code is inefficient. Nobody likes it, right? So yes, but I think they will take opportunities to differentiate themselves at this point. And Ted Cruz is doing a great job of that by being against ethanol subsidies, which
getting
is
the ball rolling.
Well, yeah. Well, Scott Walker had once said he opposed ethanol subsidies, and then when it came time to pander to Iowa, where they are growing lots of corn, where they benefit from the existence of these subsidies, he rolled over. And tons of conservative journalists, for instance, at the Examiner, Tim Carney, and elsewhere, were saying, What? That is so disappointing, Scott Walker, that when it's time to go to Iowa, you roll over for big business and ethanol subsidies. Because people, it's a real boogeyman policy that, is green and benefits big business. It gets you talking about things like Solyndra, picking winners and losers. So Ted Cruz saying he's against that and saying to hell with Iowa in that respect, I think is very beneficial for the public debate that we'll have through the course of the Republican primary.
Tax reform, here we come. I can feel it. I can smell it.
I love it.
Right around the corner. All right, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. We want you to weigh in on Ted Cruz and what you think about his run here on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, 47 minutes after the hour, here with Arthur Delaney of the Huffington Post. By the way, follow him on Twitter. Why don't you?
Oh, at Arthur Delaney HP.
That's right, at Arthur Delaney HP. We're at BP Show, at BP Show on Twitter. I should mention
Definitely
that.
Follow
Peter?
us, too. Yeah, sure.
Follow us. I'm at Igor Volsky on Twitter. If you want to tweet into the show, we, of course, always want to hear from you. 866-55-PRESS. Sherry from Chicago. Sherry, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good show. Regarding Ted Cruz, don't take him, this is my opinion, of course, don't take him lightly. He's been groomed and propped up by the Conservative Party for months and months now. And what we need to do as progressives and Democrats is get out there and get our message out. The guy is fanatical. We know that he'll slip and fall back in it, just like Rick Perry did. Remember him as a presidential candidate, Fred Thompson, the senator. Remember him?
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, so, you know, we know where he stands. We know he's fanatical, but
all right,
and we can laugh and joke and all that, but we got to go toe-to-toe with this guy.
Well, we have our eyes on him here, Sherry. Thank you for your call.
One thing to keep in mind about Ted Cruz is that he's polling badly. Like, he's not
in the field. Runner. I mean, yeah, he's not a front runner
in
at all.
In the relevant states, he's got single-digit support. Sherry's right. We should take him seriously.
Absolutely.
But he's not. I don't think many political analysts consider him one of the more serious contenders.
Well, that's because they don't know about his secret plan, his secret voter base that he's going to bring out. Here he is laying out how he's going to win.
Today, roughly half of born-again Christians aren't voting. They're staying home. Imagine instead millions of people of faith all across America coming out to the polls and voting our values.
Oh, yeah. What do you think, Mr. Delaney?
Well, so
is it possible?
Roughly half of evangelicals stayed home, but roughly half of everybody stayed home. So,
exactly.
So he's got if he got all of the evangelicals, literally all of them, yes, he would win. If somebody had figured out how to do that with their favored constituency, it would be game over.
It didn't work with Rick Santorum. No one's more evangelical than him.
But to me, even I think he's too optimistic about how kind of attractive he's going to be to these evangelical voters. I mean, even if you look at their issues on things like climate, for instance, even on some of the social issues, increasingly like marriage, a growing number of evangelicals now support same-sex marriage.
And he was against it in his speech yesterday.
Yes, probably one of the only 2016ers to really talk about it in an aggressive way, probably this cycle. But I think he overestimates his support within the evangelical community in terms of how much their issues and their concerns line up with his. I mean, he doesn't even believe in man-made climate change.
Well, is he that well known? I think part of the reason he did this announcement at Liberty University is to build that constituency and grow his support with evangelical voters. I don't think it's really going to work. Funny thing, he kissed his wife on stage, and it turns out that would get you a reprimand.
That would get you a reprimand.
Even though you're married. That's a no-no.
Oh, man. Tisk.
But so, yeah, if he got every evangelical out, you would also need the other groups of voters who aren't voting for you to stay home. So you really have to thread the needle there.
Well, he's gonna go on a fundraising tour this week. I think they hope to raise $1 million by the end of the week.
$1 million,
That's right.
Diabolical. That's how he'll win.
And look, it's easy, I think, for somebody with Cruz's message to get a rousing reception at Liberty University. I mean, no problem, particularly when the kids are supposed to be there, required to be there.
I think he is differentiating
what happens outside of Liberty, we'll see.
He's differentiating himself. He's going for the evangelical vote more aggressively. But one reason people are like, well, Jeb Bush has got this is that he has all the money.
All the money,
Just
all
that,
the consultants, all of the staff.
So Ted Cruz is
but
trying to be
But he doesn't
more
have the issues, right? He doesn't have the issue. Cruz, theoretically, when it comes to what the base wants, has the issues. Even took a dig at Jeb Bush when he said he's going to get rid of Common Core, which is, of course, something that Jeb Bush still supports.
Well, he said he would repeal every law of Common Core, which, as everyone knows, it isn't a law.
Isn't a federal law, yeah, or a law, yes. And the other evangelical piece is, of course, immigration reform. Evangelicals support immigration reform. Ted Cruz defined himself in the Senate by opposing it, particularly when it comes to Dreamers.
Well, maybe the evangelicals who stay home are against it.
Oh, the ones that come out.
That's why they stay home. I think he is successfully differentiating himself from these other guys, but they have all the money. That's his big problem.
That's his big problem. He's going to make a big push for it. We'll see if he succeeds. Arthur Delaney from the Huffington Post here, always on Tuesdays on the Bill Press Show. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, Igor.
We'll be back. Please call in 866-55-PRESS. Ted Cruz, yes, no, maybe? Right back here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You know, sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you know, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. You know, and like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 57 minutes after the hour, Bill Press Show for this Tuesday, March 24th, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky, sitting in for Bill Press. Just to pause the Ted Cruz discussion for 1 second to bring you some breaking news coming across the wires now that an Airbus AR320 aircraft, a German Airbus flying from Dusseldorf to Barcelona, has crashed in the southern French Alps, according to reports. 142 people are on board, and that's all we're hearing now. I think southern France is where the crash site is, and the reports are coming in from French security sources. I don't think we have any statuses yet on the lives of those on board.
We're going to keep an eye on it all morning, obviously. La Provence in France has already confirmed the crash, but nothing else beyond just the actual crash.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, I feel like we've seen these stories now, particularly on certain cable networks for a while. I don't know if it's more frequent than it used to be, but always a tragedy, of course, when they do come in. All right, we'll be back after this here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governor should come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas, too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people had lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts, and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself, blood pressure, or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for. I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed to where we're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Ted Cruz 2016, or maybe 1960, we're not sure. Trying to get to the bottom of it here on The Bill Press Show for this Tuesday, March 24th, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress, filling in for Bill Press. Welcome on board. Thank you for joining us. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. If you want to be part of our program, weigh in. Let us know what you think. Wonderful Bill Press team here joining me this morning. Peter Ogburn
Igor.
Here in the studio. Alyssa Murphy.
Hey, good morning.
Running the board. Good morning. Alicia Cruz taking your calls. And Cyprian Bolding making us look oh so very good on the video camera. We're going to talk about the 2016 race more broadly in just a bit with Gabe
DiBenedetti.
God, I said that so much better
You
during
said
the
you
break.
nailed it
I
during
tried
the break.
during the
You
break.
nailed
and
it when we weren't on air.
Yeah, now I just screw it up. Anyway, we're going to talk about what the race to the White House is shaping up to be, not just Ted Cruz, but also some of the other candidates out there. That's coming up. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. There is a fight brewing in Maine between Governor Paul LePage and Stephen King.
What?
Resident of Maine. Now, this all started when Stephen King was knocking the tax plan of Governor Paul LePage, and LePage said, well, what would Stephen King know? He doesn't even pay taxes. He's one of these rich guys that dodges paying taxes. Turns out that's not the case. Stephen King put out a statement that says, quote, Governor LePage is full of the stuff that makes the grass grow green. Tabby, King's wife.
I just got that, by the way, the grass grow green. I just got it.
You
Yeah.
get it? You get it? King said, quote, Tabby and I pay every cent of our Maine state income taxes and are glad to do it. In 2013, my wife and I paid approximately $1.4 million in state taxes, end quote. So not only is he paying taxes, he's paying a lot of taxes. And as he says, he's proud to do it.
Yeah, he released his tax returns and announced his presidential bid.
Yeah, right? I mean,
it's the other part of that
Governor
story.
Stephen King.
I love it. Or president. Scary.
Late last week, the Treasury Department confirmed that they are looking at replacements for the $10 bill. Now, there's been a movement here recently to put a woman on the $20 bill. And while that may still happen, the Treasury Department didn't say they weren't going to do it. But for now, they're focusing on a $10 bill. A total revamp of the $10 bill. They say that it will be in circulation by 2020. So
look out for that.
Yeah. They said that it's going to be the first one to have a raised tactile feature, making it kind of like a 3D. So it's going to be easier for blind people to identify what bill they're holding. Because now they can't. If they get cash, it's just cash. But, yeah, so there you go. There you go. And a new study took a look at the legal marijuana that's being sold in Colorado, and it turns out marijuana is as potent as it has ever been. Now, there's been sort of an issue because people weren't sure what kind of marijuana they were going to be getting when you buy these certain strains, just how powerful they are. THC levels in Colorado are up around 30% in some strains, which is quite a bit. So they are 3 times as high as the THC concentration of the street strains in 1960s and 1970s. So this ain't your dad's pot.
Well, if you're keeping track, it's 7:10 in the morning, and Peter Ogburn has already brought us two hot
weed stories.
I know. Once every hour, Igor. Look forward.
That's right.
And in the meantime, he's going to book a ticket to Colorado, I'm
Right.
pretty sure.
Hey, look, talk about what you know. All right?
That's right. Starting the morning off right. Listen, no objections here.
You know what I mean?
None at all.
I'll have another one next hour, Igor. I'm going to go find one just because.
866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. We're on Twitter, by the way, at BP Show. And you can tune in using TawkrTV, YouTube.com/TawkrTV if you want to watch us, or on some of our wonderful apps, iHeart app or the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel, or, of course, on your favorite progressive radio station. Gabe DiBenedetti. Gabe, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to be your pinch hitter.
Thank you. I'll just point at you.
Gabe, I'm sorry.
Gabe, I'm sorry. This is just so embarrassing and unprofessional. Welcome to the show. I mean, my name is Igor, so I understand. Yeah, I understand the pain you're feeling every time I butcher your name. So listen.
It's okay. It's okay.
We've been spending the show discussing Ted Cruz. He, of course, announced his candidacy yesterday. It was the first major candidate to jump into the race. At the same time, Hillary Clinton was at the Center for American Progress talking about urban America. Let me ask you, what is happening in Hillary land? We're about a week removed, or 2 weeks maybe, from the height of the email scandal. How is she getting through that first kind of bump in the road?
Yeah, in Hillary world, it's sort of, all full steam ahead. They sort of figured that this press conference that she had at the United Nations gets them past the email scandal for now, that people will continue to talk about it, but that it's going to peter out. And so they're just focusing on finalizing their hires for the early states, and they're planning their launch, which is expected to come in the coming week or two. And they're basically thinking, let's just stick with the schedule, let's get this launch going, and people will start talking about that rather than her email.
I mean, they're kind of even brushing it aside. Here she is yesterday talking about new beginnings and kind of making light of the entire email situation.
But I am all about new beginnings. A new grandchild, another new hairstyle, a new email account.
No, yeah, there you go.
Nice.
So
yeah, her team kind of figures that this is not the kind of story that's going to stick around for a long time, that no one, when it comes down to it, will actually vote based on this story. So she figures she's safe in making fun of it, and it makes her a little bit more relatable that way.
There's also, I think, a lot of agitation from some Democrats, some party leaders, that if Hillary Clinton comes across as kind of the inevitable candidate, as someone who doesn't have a primary, doesn't have to battle in the beginning, doesn't engage in any debates before we get to the general election, that she's going to be in a serious disadvantage when it comes to the general, when she's going to be up against whoever the Republican nominee is, who's battle-tested, having gone through multiple rounds of debates and everything else that comes with a presidential campaign. I thought that when we first saw the email story, that there we go. There was suddenly room for someone like Martin O'Malley to make some moves, because that was really the first time that the Hillary Clinton inevitability bubble got punctured maybe just a little bit. Is anybody on the Democratic side kind of feeling out the field to see if, in fact, they can make some kind of run or kind of push her in any direction when it comes to platform and policies?
Sure. Most people that we've heard about considering running on the Democratic side have been considering running for a while, and that's, Martin O'Malley, that's Jim Webb, that's Bernie Sanders, and maybe Joe Biden, but probably not. But we haven't heard any new names jump in, and it seems that Elizabeth Warren is still not going to jump in. But O'Malley has been a little bit more aggressive recently. He still has very low name ID. People in the real world really don't know who he is. But he's been out in the early states. The last few weekends have been in New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina. And in conversations with Clinton people, the Clinton people tell me that they expect that someone at some point over the summer is going to catch fire in polling in Iowa. And they kind of expect that it's going to be O'Malley because he's starting to talk in a slightly aggressive way about things that the Clintons have done. He's getting really, active out in these early states. And there is this big feeling among Democrats that even if they do support Hillary Clinton, as the vast majority of them do, they think, well, she really could use a challenger because when it comes down to it, after the primary season, if the Republican nominee has been through 20 debates against 20 different people and Hillary Clinton hasn't been through any, she could be at a serious disadvantage.
But is Martin O'Malley, do they think, the Hillary folks, from your conversations, do they think he's a credible challenger?
No, they don't think he's a credible challenger. They see him as a useful challenger in some ways, and that he is someone who can have substantive policy discussions. He is a serious politician, but he's polling extremely far behind her, and they, understand that the chances of him catching up anytime soon are highly unlikely. But they're not worried about that. What they're worried about is making sure that she's tested, making sure that she has some experience, getting into debates, getting into some sort of policy argument. Because if she doesn't do that, then they worry that she's going to be completely untested by the time the general election rolls around.
Well, let me ask you about the man of the hour, Ted Cruz, who, of course, yesterday took the stage at Liberty University to announce before 8,000 screaming college students and God that he's running for president. What does this do to the field? Are you going to see kind of a rash of Republicans, Rubio, Chris Christie, announcing candidacies now? Did he push up the timetable?
I don't think that he necessarily pushes up anyone's timetable immediately, but there's certainly an element of urgency that's now there that wasn't there before. I think we're still going to see Rand Paul jump in on April 7th, and Marco Rubio will probably jump in around that time as well. And a lot of these other people that you mentioned are looking at their own timelines. But, no one was surprised that Ted Cruz jumped in because he was always going to run for president. And there is an element of, well, people are paying attention to him now. Donors are paying attention to him now. Maybe other people are going to feel some pressure.
My take on Ted Cruz isn't so much that he's a threat to any of these candidates, and I think they feel the same. I don't think he's, kind of peeling donors away from Jeb Bush, for instance. But I think there's a real fear that he moves the entire political conversation to the right, that on issue after issue, he is as good as it gets for the Republican base, and candidates who aren't close to him politically, don't agree on issues like Common Core or immigration, are going to have a hard time. And the fact that he's in so early, I think, is going to make it harder for the rest of the field to kind of, maybe take positions that aren't exactly in step with the most conservative parts of the Republican Party. Is that the feeling out in the field, that he kind of shapes and kind of warps the debate?
That's certainly the feeling among Democrats. Democrats are really excited, and Clinton people in particular, that Cruz has jumped in because they feel like, well, great, the terms of debate are going to be super far to the right. This guy is going to be, agitating against his fellow Republicans in a way that makes Hillary, able to rise above it all. But Republicans are a little bit more cautious about it. It's certainly true that a lot of the establishment types don't like Ted Cruz at all because they see him as an agitator. They see him as too far right. But they're sort of letting this one play out a little bit because, again, they always knew he was going to run. So the fact that he's first in doesn't really necessarily change the substance of the debate all that much. But we'll see. You know, if he goes on a very aggressive media tour and starts lashing out at Jeb Bush and at Chris Christie, that could change things.
I mean, you can see him potentially sparking in Iowa, in New Hampshire. I mean, certainly there are elements of those voters who I think would respond very well to what he's selling.
Oh, absolutely. He is extremely popular among some parts of the Republican base, make no mistake. He doesn't poll very well because it's not clear what his coalition really is. But what he thinks is that he can pull apart these various coalitions that belong to other people and cobble together, you know, a group of extremely conservative voters, evangelical voters, libertarian voters. And that's kind of a compelling argument to some people. You know, in his announcement yesterday, he specifically said, we need to roll back Common Core or something along those lines. That's, make no mistake, a shot at Jeb Bush. I mean, he is making it quite clear that he's in this to fight. He's not in this to just, you know, get his name out there so that he can continue to run for the next 20 years and make some money. He is a true believer here.
Does he keep other conservatives out of the race? I mean, people like Rick Santorum, Mike Huckabee. If Cruz catches fire, there's no room for them this time, is there?
Not necessarily. That would be a very difficult case for either of those two guys to make if Cruz does catch fire. But that said, they all run in slightly different lanes. And Ben Carson is a similar kind of situation. They're very conservative candidates who fire up the base but don't necessarily have a lot of establishment support. But I think it's too early. No one has made any indication that they'll stand down because, again, we always expected Cruz to get in. What's surprising is how early he did it, but also, you know, what remains to be seen is how violent he is with his rhetoric, you know, as things get started.
You know, let me just ask you to kind of psychoanalyze him for a couple of minutes here. He's a fresh face in the world of politics. It's his first elected office. He's been in the Senate for 3 years now, maybe. Certainly made a name for himself with the Tea Party. But my question is, why get in now? Why not wait for 8 years? And then when you have a record of accomplishment, when you can kind of build up credibility, when you can attract the kind of talent, the kind of staff talent you need to be successful in places like Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, then run, and then maybe you have a real viable chance of being the party's nominee. It just feels so early to me. Do you think he's in this, A, for himself, B, for the issues, or C, does he really think he has a shot at this thing?
There are a few elements here, but I think the easy counter-argument that Cruz world will make to the argument that you just made is, well, look at Barack Obama. You know, he was only in the Senate for 2 years, and he sure didn't have any problem with viability. And Cruz, you know, obviously is not going to go around comparing himself to Obama for a number of obvious reasons, but he really does believe these things that he says, and you know it's easy to be cynical about this, and he's trying to self-promote, which is certainly part of it for any major politician. But there's no doubt that he really does believe in these issues, and he really does think, you know, that America is on the precipice or whatever the way that he puts it. He is someone who, from the second he walked into the Senate, has had no problem whatsoever with, you know, getting in lots of fights, even with members of his own party, with people who were widely respected, to the point where most people understand, most people believe that for Ted Cruz, this isn't a personal game. You know, he's not going to turn this into a Fox show. Most people believe that he truly, genuinely thinks that this is the only way to save America.
All right, although a Fox show would be entertaining, and we would all watch.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Gabe.
Well, and I won't rule it out.
Gabe Divinedetti, political reporter for Politico. Apologize again for butchering your name. Thank you for joining us. The Bill Press Show rolls along. We'll be back with Emily Tish Sussman, my colleague at the Center for American Progress. Please stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. If I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
All right, 28 minutes after the hour of the Bill Press Show. I'm Igor Volsky. Coming up next, Emily Tish Sussman, my colleague at the Center for American Progress, on the election and much, much more. Stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans. Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show continues on this Tuesday, March 24th, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky, filling in for Bill Press. And joining me now here in the studio is Emily Tish Sussman. She covers campaigns, manages campaigns at the Center for American Progress, and sits right down the hall from me.
Which is the best part of my day, every day, for sure.
I hope so. I mean, I
best
pass
part of my
by
job.
Her office, I always look in, and if she's there, I just keep walking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow. That's fired.
I have to flag him down, run down the hallway.
Throwing stuff at him when he walks by in the hallway. That's a good game.
I am very busy. I do not have time for any of this.
You just can look busy.
Well, that's what I'm best at, actually.
With a stack of papers.
It's that like congressional hallway walk, right?
Yeah.
That like I'm too busy. Look at my BlackBerry.
Yeah. Well, we all watch The West Wing, so we all know.
Although I'll be honest, I didn't watch The West Wing.
Emily,
I know, and I moved down here right after the Obama inauguration, and I feel like everyone was referring to it all the time.
All right,
Like,
Emily, thank you for joining us. Emily Sussman covers campaigns
and knows nothing.
Well, listen, speaking of campaigns, we've been talking about Ted Cruz the entire hour, how long have we been on the air? Entire hour and a half. 90 minutes. I want to get to this part of his announcement speech yesterday at Liberty University. Here he is speaking about the healthcare law on the 5th anniversary of Obamacare, describing his plan.
5 years ago today, the president signed Obamacare into law. Within hours, Liberty University went to court filing a lawsuit to stop that failed law.
Why did it take hours? That's what I want to know. Too long. Should have had that prepared and ready to go. So he says, they filed the lawsuit, but he has his own approach to healthcare, and that, of course, includes first getting rid of Obamacare.
Instead of the joblessness, instead of the millions forced into part-time work, instead of the millions who've lost their health insurance, lost their doctors, have faced skyrocketing health insurance premiums. Imagine in 2017, a new president signing legislation repealing every word of Obamacare.
Every word.
Feels so good. To me, there's an innate contradiction here, Emily. On one hand, you have Republicans from the day the law was passed 5 years ago saying we're going to get rid of this thing and we'll come up with something better. On the other hand, they're now at the Supreme Court where they're going to rule whether or not those 3 words about tax credits going to just the state-based exchanges, whether or not they apply to everybody or just those people. And as a result, millions of people could lose their subsidies. And the court has kind of suggested, or at least the belief is, if there's no alternative to Obamacare, that is, if they strike down subsidies for the federal exchanges and millions of people lose coverage and have nowhere else to go, that's going to be very disruptive and that would prevent them from coming to that decision. But people like Ted Cruz kind of disrupt that expectation of some Republicans who think, well, maybe we can cobble something together, some kind of alternative to Obamacare, so the justices can look, these guys have a plan. They got these people taken care of. How hurtful it is to the conservative cause of pretending that there's some kind of alternative to Obamacare when you have people like Ted Cruz out there saying every word, every sentence, every period, comma.
Yeah, it's not possible. They are living in fantasy land. It's really, they're not doing themselves any sort of service by living in this like total fantasy land that Obamacare is not being implemented. People are not reaping the benefits of the law. The fact is they are. The law is in effect. And in fact, at this point, every piece of the law is in effect. Right away, it went to young people up to 26 could stay on their parents' plans. Then the exchange is open for people to be able to buy individual plans. So it was rolled in, covering pre-existing conditions. But they're pretending like none of this is happening. They're pretending like they're still in 2010 and they're like, oh, wipe it away. Get rid of it with a pen. Nothing will happen. That's not the reality. We heard from HHS last week that 16.4 new people are newly insured. So all of those people that are now getting insurance, they're saying, oh, no problem. No problem. And none of the things, it's actually interesting to look at the polling between the public at large, between what they think is happening under Obamacare versus the reality. So what they think is happening is there's still pretty much many are still believing Republican rhetoric that people's premiums are going up, that it's not covering a lot of people, that it's incurring job loss, that people are losing their plans. That's a big one because they pushed that pretty hard, especially in this last election. So they're believing that people are losing their plans. But the reality of what we're seeing coming out of HHS, who they've got it, right?
They got the numbers.
They've got the serious numbers, is that the amount of people that actually were not able to keep the plans was under 1%. I think it was 0.2% of individual plans. So they're believing that rhetoric. So the Republicans are just driving hard in it. Double down, keep going.
And that's really the problem, right? Is that you can't walk 2 steps without finding someone who benefited from the law. Just look at the students at Liberty University. Many of them, I bet, are on their parents' plan. Because Liberty, as I found out through some clever Googling, doesn't offer a health plan for students. There's no mandatory health plan. But if you're an international student, you need to have a health policy. That health policy is administered by, I think now, Anthem, before it was Aetna a couple of years ago. And in that policy are the very Obamacare provisions that Mr. Cruz hates so much. So staying on your
it's
parents'
crazy,
plan
right?
until
Turns
you're
out
26.
what people want.
Yeah, the preventive care stuff, making sure you have preventive care services without additional out-of-pocket expenses. So the fact that the folks in his audience, kind of his base, that Christian army that he talked about, are all benefiting from the law, either through Liberty, if they have that Liberty plan. And it's funny because there's this clause, there's a PDF on the Liberty website with the plan, so you can see what the plan looks like. And then the cover page in very big letters says, if you are under 26, you can be a dependent on your parents' plan. And under this plan, if you're you're married and you have children, you can list them as dependents until age 26. So it was very curious to me that even in that setting, Ted Cruz couldn't say he's going to repeal Obamacare without kind of coming smack up against people who are currently benefiting from it.
I mean, they're just bumping into benefits from the law right and left, right? Like they can't even stop themselves. And they're living in this world where they think it's an option just to go in and wholesale repeal. And when they talk about the pieces of the law, when confronted, and this has been happening for the last 5 years in town halls all over the country in their districts, when they're confronted with people that are benefiting from the pieces of the law, generally their responses are, oh, well, I support your case. And no, I would never want to take away insurance for your pre-existing condition.
You'll get that under my plan.
My plan.
Fine. My plan. You'll get all of that.
Yeah, my made-up plan that makes no sense, right? And so the piece that the big pieces they will one-on-one go after in that they object to are individual mandates and business mandates, right? Like those are the pieces they say they really object to. People are compelled under the law to get insurance that way. So the thing with those pieces is that what happens if you take those pieces away? The people that actually need the coverage and have the pre-existing condition, their premiums would go so high, it would be impossible. It would be impossible for them to be covered. So they really can't. There's no Republican plan that actually supports the ideals that they say that they're trying to get to.
There's no Republican plan because Republicans...
Well, there's no Republican plan.
Well, yeah. But they've also, I think, had a hard time since winning the Senate majority of actually showing that they can govern. You see that in Obamacare, the fact that they have no alternative. They're not talking about any replacement in any big way. And you see that with the big debate now on Capitol Hill about the anti-trafficking bill, the abortion provision that were snuck or not snuck into that bill, and the nomination confirmation of Loretta Lynch to be this country's attorney general, with Republicans saying if you don't pass these abortion measures that are folded into a larger anti-trafficking bill that everybody supports, well, guess what? Loretta Lynch isn't getting confirmed. How long can they keep doing this stalemate?
They think that they are playing hardball. Like they think they're playing great politics. They can't hold their caucus together either in the Senate or in the House. And they think, when you talk about Loretta Lynch for Attorney General's confirmation, this is the longest we've gone without an Attorney General who's been pending. They don't dispute her qualifications in any way, which is what's sort of interesting. Everybody agrees she's brilliant, she's tough, she's got it all. Like everybody agrees on that. But first they were holding up her nomination because of the president's executive order on immigration. Now they're holding up her nomination because they want to play really hardball on the trafficking bill. because they want to sneak in these, whatever it is, this potentially snuck in abortion provisions. But they think they're in a great place. Like they think this is just what's called hard negotiation. And they think, oh, why should we just, agree to a bill that is normally agreed to in the normal course of business? Because you know what governments generally do? They govern. They don't stand around and quibble over things that they really snuck in, honestly. And so they think they're in a great place on this nomination. They think they have a bargaining chip, something the president wants, and so they're gonna hold that. But I actually think that part of the problem is that they're not feeling the pressure. Like they need to feel like
they need to know it matters. People care.
They need to know it matters, and unfortunately, I think that the expectation has become so low for what Congress can do that when you hear these stories of them holding up the Attorney General of the United States over a trafficking bill that they should be able to come to agreement on in the first place,
you're like, oh, it could be worse. This isn't so bad.
Oh, they haven't shut down the government yet.
Could get worse.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, wait for that to happen.
All right, Emily Tish Sussman covering campaigns for the Center for American Progress. She's at EMTSUS on Twitter, MTSUS. I'm Igor Volsky here for Bill Press. We'll be back with more Emily right after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that would be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. And like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
48 minutes after the hour, Emily Tish Sussman joining us here on The Bill Press Show was surprised to hear that The Nation magazine said that The Bill Press Show is a valuable show. I don't know why you were so shocked, Emily.
Never surprised. I was just honored to be included on this show.
It's only getting better. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress, filling in for Bill Press. Emily, we're talking about the Republicans' inability to govern, and the inability for anyone to govern over the last, 4 or 5 years with the divided government after healthcare reform passed in 2010. Here's my question. Voters clearly are just fed up with this situation. Democrats, Republicans, they're throwing everybody out under the bus and saying, these guys can't do it. We need a change. So for me, a guy like Ted Cruz, who represents no compromise, who represents just, kind of going as far as you can, trying to get what you want without giving an inch. To me, I don't see, even if I'm a conservative voter who supports a lot of the things that Ted Cruz is asking for, if I am going to spend 4 more years of my life listening to news about Ted Cruz getting nothing done, everyone being deadlocked, and nothing happening, and must-pass legislation like the anti-trafficking bill, for instance, key nominations not going anywhere because no one can do anything, I can't support anybody here. I mean, nobody. This is, I think, why outsiders in this election who have been out of government, maybe governors who haven't been in D.C., have a better shot because at least maybe they can kind of shake everything up and get something done.
Look, it is definitely right that Cruz takes a very strong position, and for that reason is really despised by his colleagues in the Senate.
He has
even
some
on the
strong
Republican
opinions.
Side.
Yeah.
He's a bold man, if nothing else. But he is really not well received among Republican senators. Especially towards the end of the year, when they were in the lame duck, they were going into caucus meetings and discussing what they were going to, what their strategy was going to be and what they were going to do on the floor. He wouldn't say a word, and then he would walk right out and talk to the reporters, or he would go right out onto the floor and pull some antics. He is really not well respected among colleagues. He is in it for himself without question. So I think the biggest problem over the last couple of years in the rise of the very anti-establishment is that it ends up being self-confirming.
Yes.
You say the government doesn't do anything. You block any ability to do anything. You shut down the government and you pretend like it's not a problem. And then you look to get reelected.
Look at that. It doesn't
work. It doesn't
yeah.
work. Oh, it's amazing.
I told you.
Oh, it's defund the IRS and then you don't like what they're doing, right? It's amazing. It doesn't work. But I think the bigger problem is that what that ends up doing is it ends up making people feel regular people feel like they're so disenfranchised, there's no reason to take part in the system at all. So the only ones who end up being motivated to stay involved are really at the very extremes, and particularly at the far right, because they think they really want to shut down the government and dismantle everything they possibly can. So it ends up being self-fulfilling for them, but then it also ends up scaring off just, regular people that could be potentially more involved with the system and falling a little bit closer. And they don't because it seems so disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, it really gives our democracy a black eye.
Oh, it really does. Look, and I mean, you're talking about people being disgusted by everyone in the whole body. I actually don't take the most popular position here, but I think we'd be in better shape if everyone voted their members out. I think that members of Congress across the board should be feeling much more accountable to their constituents. I think if there was higher participation rates, then they'd be feeling much more accountable.
Well, Emily, you're going to be getting some calls later today about that comment here on the Bill Press Show. Emily Tish Sussman, she covers campaigns for the Center for American Progress. Follow her on Twitter at EMTSUS. I'm Igor Volsky, filling in for Bill Press. Emily, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back soon.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC. Or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
would you like a bag?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
56 minutes after the hour, the Bill Press Show, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. I'm Igor Volsky, filling in for Bill Press. We're going to be joined in just a couple of moments in the next hour by Pentagon and Defense reporter for The Hill, Christina Wong, to discuss what has been for the last week and a half, my favorite topic, which is what is happening to American policy in the Middle East, America's policy towards Israel, and of course, the ongoing negotiations in Iran. Say what you will about domestic issues, about economic policy. Yes, it's going to shape the 2016 election, but I strongly suspect that it's going to be the defense issues, the international issues that might define it. You throw in Russia and Putin, and you talk about Hillary Clinton, who shaped so much of Obama's foreign policy. Look, I think voters are going to have a lot to say about Obama's foreign policy, about Hillary Clinton's foreign policy, about the threat of ISIS and who they feel can best protect them. And in that sense, people like Ted Cruz, as we've been talking about this whole hour, I think are really in trouble because they don't have a foreign policy record. They don't have foreign policy experience to talk of. That's Hillary Clinton, who's been Secretary of State, was Senator, and of course, First Lady before that. The question is, how is she going to differentiate herself from President Obama? Is she going to distance herself from his new evolving Israel position? We'll ask Christina Wong as she joins us next here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
James West here, reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to
protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hour 3 of The Bill Press Show, here from our beautiful studios in Washington, D.C. I'm Igor Volsky of Think Progress, filling in for Bill Press. As we move into our final hour, we're going to, shake it up a little bit. I know we've done a lot of Ted Cruz. I feel like it's important to really understand what this man stands for. We're going to switch gears a little bit, talk about some foreign policy, and figure out what this administration is trying to get out of Iran in terms of containing their nuclear program, although they hate that word, containment. But also Israel, where Obama is trying to adopt a new line, new rhetoric about the state of Israel, but will it actually transfer into new policy? Pentagon and defense reporter for The Hill, Christina Wong, joins us in studio for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
And of course, we're always joined by our fabulous, beautiful Bill Press team. Alyssa Murphy here on the board. I said beautiful, so I have to go.
What an entrance.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alyssa. Alicia Cruz, let me see that hand. Wave it. Oh, a whole face. Oh, my God. Look at that. I did say beautiful. Cyprian Bolding.
Still waiting. I'm still waiting for my
is here as well. He's responsible for all of these videos and making sure that you can see us on TawkrTV, YouTube/TawkrTV. We're also streaming on our apps. There are several apps. You can use the iHeartRadio app or the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel. Of course, if you're driving, you're probably listening to us on your favorite progressive radio station, and we thank them for carrying us. And yes, then there's Peter Ogburn here in the studio as well. He's Bill's executive producer and is, somehow tangentially involved with the show in some way. I'm not sure.
Thank you for being
Not sure exactly what he does here, but he is here with me. So we're gonna
take it.
Yeah, well, take what you can get. We're gonna get into all of these pressing questions on the world stage with Christina Wong. But first,
This is the Full Court Press.
All right, here are just a couple of other stories making news. We go to the Texas Roadhouse restaurant in Asheville, North Carolina, where 25-year-old Derek Gilliam went out to dinner to celebrate his birthday with his wife and his toddler. They ordered a little glass of cranberry juice for the toddler, except the toddler did not get cranberry juice. According to WLOS-TV in Asheville, the toddler was served sangria, which the toddler drank, by the way. Now, the next part of the story is not funny. Whatever you think, it's going to sound funny, but it is not funny. The mother of the child says that she was, quote, staggering and kissing everything.
Oh, my gosh.
End quote. She also got sick, where they took her to the hospital, and they said, yeah, your daughter is drunk.
That happens to me when I drink sangria, too.
Yeah, same here. I kiss everything, too. So, I mean, everything was fine, I guess. The baby is fine. She had a rough night. The mother said she had kind of a rough night and probably an even worse morning the next morning.
Man.
Poor little girl.
Yeah, getting that out early, getting it out of the way early, sowing her wild oats early, and then
that's right.
She'll be a serious toddler.
That's right. Igor, we've been very successful in our careers. We're not quite ready to retire, though. But if you wanted to retire, can you guess the best state where you could retire? Because there is a full list out now.
Well, I mean, I would say, for me, I would probably want to go to California.
All right, California. Bankrate's annual best and worst states to retire ranking. All right, Christina, where would you want to go?
I'm from California.
California?
So I'd definitely go to
back
California.
there, yeah.
Any other guesses? Any other guesses?
What about a place like, Florida, I guess, would be the traditional.
Yeah. Florida is number 28 on the list. California is number 31. The best state to retire?
Drum roll, please.
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Here's why. Because they put together...
They spelled California wrong.
That's right. They took cost of living, crime rate, community well-being, health care quality, tax rate, and weather. Those were all of the things that factored into why you would want to retire somewhere. And Wyoming has very good criteria for
What
all
about
of those.
with things to do while retired?
Oh, that's that.
Where does Wyoming rank
You
there?
can sleep anywhere. You know? I think they show Matlock there.
I'd like to have a very active retirement.
I'm so old, I'm using Matlock references
God.
to show other people being old.
Yeah.
Like,
What's
kids today have
Matlock?
no idea what
I'm just kidding.
Right. So others on the list, by the way, to round out the top 5. Colorado's number 2, Utah number 3, Idaho number 4, and right here, Virginia number 5.
Oh.
So there you go. And only because I promised you that I would do another one, Main Street website put together the 8 states that are most likely to legalize recreational marijuana in the next session. I've done a marijuana story in every hour, so I'm going to continue that. California is at the top of the list, which is Bill says. Bill votes in California. He's embarrassed that they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, Bill's there now, mysteriously.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah.
Florida also on the list, and Maine is very near the top of that list as well. Maine has some legislation right now that's headed that direction to make it legal to smoke recreational marijuana. So,
well, there you have it. There you have it. Tune in tomorrow for more pot updates. Here on the Bill Press Show.
Hey,
it's gonna come loaded.
Talk about what you know.
Exactly.
That too.
All right, Christina Wong here from The Hill, Pentagon and Defense reporter for that great publication.
Thank you.
Let's start with what to me kind of really summarized the Republican position on what is becoming a fairly partisan issue, which is America's relationship with Israel. I mean, for years, politicians from both parties all kind of towed the the America's line, which was to say, look, the best way to solve the Middle East crisis is bilateral negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. That's the only way you're going to do it. If you go to the UN, if you go to the International Criminal Court, it's going to disrupt the process, and that's not how you get peace. But last week, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is that country's prime minister, now is going to enter, presumably, his 4th term. Before his re-election, told a right-wing website owned by Sheldon Adelson, of course a Republican donor through and through and a strong Bibi supporter, that he no longer supports a Palestinian state and that in his fourth term, you're not going to see one. And the president took this very seriously, President Obama, and has since said, if Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't believe in a two-state solution, then the Palestinians really don't have a partner in peace when it comes to the Middle East, and so maybe we'll consider going through multinational organizations. The Republicans have been fairly quiet on this until recently. And let's just play audio here of Ted Cruz kind of summarizing what the GOP reaction it was, an approach to Bibi Netanyahu and how they feel Obama's treating him.
Instead of a president who boycotts Prime Minister Netanyahu, imagine a president who stands unapologetically with the nation of Israel.
Imagine that. Well, we've been imagining it for the last, 30, 40, 50 years, for a very long time. Well, tell us, what is happening with this rift? Yes, Obama and Dennis McDonough, his chief of staff, yesterday at J Street, kind of a more progressive Israel lobby, talked about a two-state solution and that America's going to do everything in its power to make that happen. What are they actually doing?
Well, I think there's three things going on here. I think one, Obama is in his last term, and so he has more latitude and more freedom to say what he really believes. And so he's going to press Israel and hold Israel to its word. And then you have 2016 right around the corner. So you've got a lot of candidates.
It's already here.
It's already here.
We don't need to go around any corners.
It is full-fledged. You had Ted Cruz announce yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to see heightened rhetoric. And then just the Iran debate really exploded over the last month or so. I mean, it's been long in coming over the last few years, but it just got really nasty with the Republican letter signed by 47 Republican senators. And then you saw the House have send its own letter to President Obama with 367 signatures. So you're just seeing sort of a culmination of all these things happening. And it's...
to me, it's like crazy. It's like we're living in a new era. We've turned a new page on this issue. I mean, I've lived in Israel. I've been following Israeli policy for a long time. I'm very kind of interested and sort of invested in it. And for a long time, as I said, the parties have always been on the same page. If you look at the Republican platform, it calls for a two-state solution, as does the Democratic platform. But here, now that Netanyahu rejected it and kind of tried to very clumsily walk it back through a series of interviews with American press, the Obama administration isn't buying it. They said we can't. McDonough said yesterday we can't just ignore these words and pretend they didn't happen.
That's so unusual. Usually the administration is very quiet when it comes to dissent with Israel.
Right. Exactly. So how do you see this playing out politically? I mean, to my eyes, Republicans are kind of pretending it never happened or are dismissing it as election rhetoric.
You're right.
Say the least,
you're right. They haven't addressed it at all, really. I mean, except for what the president is saying. They're not saying anything about it.
They just say, stand with Bibi.
Netanyahu said.
Stand with Bibi.
Yeah.
And then you have Obama, who, as you point out, is in his last term and has that freedom and latitude to maybe not really worry about what the overall voting public thinks. But then you have Hillary Clinton, who has been moderate let's just say moderate on the Israel issue, and who needs I would say, who needs, Israeli voters to win the nomination, to win the general election. I mean, do we expect this rift to continue into the campaign, or do you think it's kind of like a momentary blip that only has to do with the Obama administration?
It's really hard to tell what's a blip or not because, we're in campaign season already. But I think you mentioned Israeli voters. I mean, that's incredibly important. So, I mean, I don't know how long
especially in places like Florida.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And then you've got, Rubio as a potential candidate, and, who's from Florida. So, it's hard to tell how lasting this will be. I mean, events could be overtaken by whether, I think the issue of Iran and Israel is going to be top in the news for the next few weeks or so. You have the deadline for a framework agreement at the end of this month.
Oh,
so we're going to see, so we're going to continue seeing the rhetoric.
So worried.
And then April 14th, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is going to vote on the in Iran legislation bill to give the Senate any kind of approval authority or at least a chance to review an agreement. So you're going to see it stretch into next month, certainly.
Yeah, Iran here is like a serious backdrop because the disintegration of America's relationship with Netanyahu is really established in Obama's attempt to find a negotiated settlement to Iran's nuclear program. Israel, as we know, is very much against that. And the Wall Street Journal reported this morning that the Israelis were spying on the talks. Did you see this, Peter? In an effort to undermine them, and then are now talking to the Europeans,
to the French,
the French, who are also part of the negotiations, in an effort to kind of point out all of the problems from their point of view.
Nice,
and the negotiations are set to conclude June 30th. So, I mean, so we're talking, this is going to be a topic for a while here.
And for me, all of this work is going into finding a negotiated agreement. Kerry, Obama, expending huge amounts of political capital for this.
Right.
And yet, as you point out, it's going to come up against a Congress. Both parties don't want to see this go into effect. They want either approval of the final negotiation. They want to be able to impose more sanctions if they feel like it's necessary. I mean, it's hard for me not to see how this doesn't blow up in Obama's face ultimately. Either way, if they don't come up with an agreement or if Congress says, okay, that was nice, kind of, wrap it up and throw it out.
Yeah, it just keeps going back and forth. Who has the political advantage on this? I mean, you saw with first Cotton, Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, after he sent the letter, he was on a high. And then after it's, so-called, backfired, then you saw the administration coming out strong. So it's really both sides are taking political advantage of this. It's just a really hot button issue.
All right. Well, Christina, I think if it all fails, you and I move and retire to California. That's the plan.
Or Florida,
Wyoming, I'm telling you.
Well,
that's the place to go, man.
Depends what you want to do.
Yeah, right?
For your recreational activities.
866-55-PRESS if you want to weigh in on Israel and Obama's policy towards the Jewish state. Christina Wong, she's going to stick with us into the next segment as we continue here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, dancing and talking up a storm here on the Bill Press Show. Yeah, I got all the moves. Christina Wong, Pentagon and Defense reporter for The Hill, is with us. And we're discussing the Iran negotiations and Congress's effort to at least slow down any effort by the Obama administration to try and reach a deal with Iran over their disputed nuclear program. Christina, there appear to be kind of several different ways that Congress is doing this.
Well, there are two major ways. You've got legislation by Senators Bob Corker, and Senator Bob Menendez. And what that would do is allow for 60 days before any deal would be actually implemented, and that would give time for Congress to actually have a vote. And if they vote no, I believe then the sanctions by Congress could not be permanently lifted. It would stymie implementation of the agreement. And then you've got Senator Mark Kirk from Illinois, and also with Bob Menendez, that bill would restore sanctions that were lifted and then impose tougher sanctions if Iran walks away from the table or if it violates any future agreement. So that's
really the lever that Congress has, are these sanctions the majority of which they've imposed and only they can repeal. Yes. So Obama's at the negotiating table, but he has limited ability to waive some of the executive order sanctions. The real crux of what Iran's trying to get rid of is what Congress has imposed.
Right.
And so if Iran feels or Obama can't deliver on lifting the sanctions, I mean, it's hard to see how this could work out.
Yes. And you saw Tom Cotton trying to, relay that to Iran directly, although I think it was intended for the White House, really.
And just quickly, I mean, what's the White House's defense? Why can't this go to Congress?
Well, they I think they see some in the Republican Party as just wanting to spoil any kind of deal.
Yeah, they're not serious about this, they think.
Yeah, and just wanting the alternative. They say war with Iran, which...
Or higher sanctions. All right, Christina Wong, yes. Pentagon and Defense reporter for The Hill. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm Igor Volsky. We'll be back with more Bill Press Show after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, 33 minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show rolls along into our final half hour for this Tuesday, March 24th, 2015. I'm Igor Volsky, filling in for Bill Press. We've been talking about Ted Cruz. But our next guest, Emma Roller, staff correspondent for National Journal, says that I've been getting it all wrong. That here I've been, Emma, spending 3 hours telling our listeners that Ted Cruz is the first candidate to announce for 2016. I've been like super excited about
Stop
it.
the lies, Igor.
Apparently. Okay. Tell me what am I getting wrong?
So you are right in that
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Ted Cruz is the first high-profile candidate to declare that he's running for president in 2016. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are all of these regular folks, Americans, who have already filed with the Federal Election Commission that they're running for president in 2016. So Ted Cruz is, in fact, not the first, but the 195th person to declare he is running for president in 2016.
I mean, do you feel like he knows that? Would he be upset if he knew that he wasn't the first?
I don't think he would necessarily be bothered by that, because I talked to some of these people, and they're people like, like a stay-at-home mom in Richmond who just like had some extra time on her hands, and she ran in 2012 and is like, sure, why not run again?
Well, so she thought.
Yeah. That woman's name is Mitt Romney.
Oh, So, but are there any other kind of? Ben Carson isn't one of them, right? He has not officially declared.
No.
He's kind of the only one who's a potential headliner in some way. The rest of these 155 aren't grabbing any headlines.
No, they're not politicians for the most part, but I did manage to sort of track some of them down and talk to them and ask them, why are you running for president? And actually, one of the guys I talked to was at the top of the New Hampshire primary ballot in 2012, and his name is Joe Story. It did not work out so well for him, but he's running again. So
why did they tell you that they want to do this? I mean, I guess they have to have some semblance of a campaign. They have to exert some time doing this. What's the point if nobody knows about them?
Well, it's sort of an anti-message in a way. One of the guys I talked to is a libertarian from Ohio, and he is, on principle, not taking donations that are more than $5. So to show
make fundraising hard.
Yeah. But his point is to show the role of money in politics. And so it's, like I said, it's sort of an anti-message of, you have no idea who I am. And in our political system, you have to be a celebrity to run.
Huh. Interesting.
I kind of like that idea. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty great.
I sort of bought into it.
I think like a guy like that should get more attention. I'm glad you're writing about it, but
Thank you.
I think it's great.
I mean, Peter, I think there's room for you in this race. I mean, what's 156?
Definitely.
Candidate 156.
Sure.
Yeah,
I got no skeletons in my closet.
Well, no, you don't. Yeah, we'll come up with a squeaky clean over here.
I actually have to tell you the best name for one of the presidential committees is the Sydney's Voluptuous Buttocks Committee.
Damn it, that's what I was gonna use. That's what I was going to use for my campaign. Damn it.
And what's the platform?
It's a very solid platform. Let's just say that.
Oh, man. All right. Well, candidate 155, Ted Cruz, which is, I feel like, how we should refer to him on the show now.
196, actually.
Holy crap.
What?
Really?
196?
Yeah.
All right. Candidate 196, Ted Cruz. He isn't really being accepted with open arms, you're telling me, by the other Republicans in the field, because yesterday, Rand Paul, who of course himself is probably going to run for president, the senator from Kentucky.
When he gets flustered.
Senator from Kentucky is probably going to declare next month, April 7th?
April 7th,
He didn't have nice words to say.
Well, he went on Megyn Kelly last night specifically to sort of respond to Cruz's announcement. And what he said is, Ted Cruz is a conservative. We come from the same wing of the party, but it comes down to winnability. And it is interesting because Ted Cruz's whole philosophy is that to win in 2016, Republicans need to attract more conservatives and more Reagan Democrats, is what he said. And, not shy away from the right wing, whereas Rand Paul is trying to unite the party, he says, and bring in more college students and more minorities and traditionally people who do not vote for Republicans.
And he's right about that. I mean, on certain issues, on issues like his foreign policy, which appears to be ever evolving towards the more interventionist wing, but at least where he started out as this person who thinks America should have a small footprint, his views on criminal justice reform and his views on marijuana are fairly in line with what most young people, kind of traditional, maybe more democratic voters believe. And so in that sense, he can peel some Democrat voters away from whoever the Democratic
voters. Democratic voters. You fell into that Fox News line, man. You said Democrat voters. Bill wouldn't let that stand.
Well, Bill's not here.
He's here in spirit.
I think
he's always with us.
I think you're right that Rand Paul can sort of appeal to young people on these select issues like, marijuana, criminal justice reform. But I think as 2016 progresses, after he announces and the media sort of drills down into his other policy positions and people find out, he's against gay marriage and other things, I think, people will start to realize he is not so much of a social liberal as they think.
There's some deal breakers in there for progressive.
I mean, you've already absentee voted for Rand Paul just because of his marijuana position. So don't even pretend.
What does that even mean?
I'm not a one-issue voter.
Yeah,
but it matters.
He spent the entire show feeding me marijuana stories, just so you know.
Feeding you marijuana stories.
Stories. But let me ask you about this theory of the case for Ted Cruz, which is if you have this army of Christian soldiers voting for him, people who don't normally vote, conservative Christian voters, that this is kind of the way he's going to build a coalition, win the nomination, and then win the general is by bringing out all the evangelical voters who usually stay at home. Now, but to me, I think he's kind of overselling himself because even if you look at where evangelical voters fall on issues like immigration and on issues like climate change increasingly, they break with Ted Cruz. They want comprehensive immigration reform. He doesn't. They want some kind of more climate sensibility. He doesn't even believe in man-made climate change. So if we apply that same theory, which is as voters learn more about Rand Paul, they'll find out that maybe he's not all that. Isn't that also true for Cruz's supposed base here? That as evangelical voters are gravitated towards his position on guns and his position on maybe even marriage or foreign policy and supporting Israel, that as they dig deeper into some of these kind of core issues of immigration, climate, and others, that they too will be disappointed?
Well, I think that's a really interesting point. And I think it comes down to the breakdown between what Ted Cruz calls courageous conservatives and the compassionate conservatism that you're sort of speaking more to, the sort of Jack Kemp conservatives, which Rand Paul is now trying to hearken back to by reaching out to minority communities. There are these evangelical voters who are pro-life, and because they're pro-life, they're also anti-death penalty. They're also pro-immigration reform. But I think what we're seeing is that a lot of the Republican spread in 2016 has pretty similar positions on immigration and Obamacare. While a lot of them may have supported a path to citizenship in the past, like Scott Walker, they're now saying no amnesty, got to secure the border first. And they're all pretty lockstep in that. And they all obviously oppose Obamacare.
You bring up Jack Kemp, but the person that Ted Cruz compares himself to is the late Senator Jesse Helms. This is who he said he wants to see hundreds of Jesse Helmses in the Senate. Helmi, if you will. Jesse, of course, was the longest-serving elected senator from North Carolina, and has had a whole host of curious positions on issues like civil rights, gay rights, voting rights for African Americans, opposing all of those, mainly.
Was mad racist.
Yeah, was mad racist. So I don't know if Ted Cruz is referring to those parts of his agenda or the fact that he was well known for his strong constituent work and always helping among his constituents? Not sure. But, this kind of gets into this question of how ready is this guy for prime time with comments like that? I mean, if Obama had like a Jeremiah Wright problem at some point, and we often hear in politics about associations and how they can tear a candidate down, going out there and in a speech proclaiming that there should be 100 Jesse Helmses, it seems like it could damage your chances in appealing to young people.
And I think the personal rubbing off on the candidate is a good point to make. And it's something that a lot of the candidates in 2016 share. I mean, first of all, you've got Hillary Clinton and she's going to be, have people legislating Bill Clinton's record, but you've also got people like Jesse Helms, people like Ted Cruz's father, who's never afraid to speak his mind.
Yeah.
You've got Ron Paul, who is not at all afraid to speak his mind. So I think you're going to see a lot of sort of litigating these candidates through the people they've associated themselves with.
All right, maybe we'll get into Daddy Cruz in the next segment here with Emma Roller. She's staff correspondent for National Journal. As the Bill Press Show continues, I'm Igor Volsky. Stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. And like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press
47
Show.
minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show rolling along here with Emma Rowler, staff correspondent for National Journal, joining us in studio to discuss Ted Cruz and the 2016 race. But first, some breaking reactions to the Ted Cruz announcement from Congressman Peter King of New York. Quote, "I'll jump off that bridge when we come to it if Ted Cruz wins the nomination," he says. Then we
what
go...
an endorsement.
Yeah.
Jump off that bridge.
Jump off that bridge. Then we go to John Cornyn, who is, of course, Cruz's fellow senator from Texas, asked about Ted Cruz's run and if he would support his junior senator. Cornyn said, "You know what? We got a lot of Texans who are running for president, so I'm going to watch this one from the sidelines." Not exactly a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, I had to even think for a second, what other Texans? And then, oh yeah, Rick Perry.
All right.
Feel bad. He's like the redheaded stepchild of 2016.
That almost sounds like a Rick Perry joke. The fact that you forgot about him.
They're the three candidates.
Yeah, exactly.
Ted Cruz, Rand Paul.
Forget the third one.
Oh yeah, Rick Perry.
Oops.
So, Emma, let me ask you, how is kind of the 2016 field shaping up in general? We heard in the beginning a lot about Jeb Bush, that he's the front runner, he has all the money. Is that still the case?
I think that is still the case. So this is something where timing comes into play a lot. And an important point is that as federally elected candidates, senators like Rand Paul and Marco Rubio, who have not declared yet that they're running, can't be involved with super PACs, whereas people who have declared that they're running can start attracting those super PAC dollars. So for that reason, Rand Paul and Marco Rubio are both going to announce probably sooner than any of the other Republicans in the field.
Because they need to raise money.
Yeah, to be honest, yes. And, I think that Jeb Bush is frankly light years ahead of everyone in fundraising on the Republican side. Obviously, it's going to be a lot to surmount Hillary Clinton when she does announce. She'll be able to basically shoot out of the gate and, immediately have legions of Democratic supporters willing to open their checkbooks for her.
And that really seems to be the best prognosticator of winning the nomination, how much money you could raise, and if you have support from the establishment. Because then you attract all of the best staff, you have the best infrastructure, and that's what really allows you to win. I mean, in a place like Iowa, in a place like New Hampshire and South Carolina, people kind of miss, I think, that requires a lot of staff work, a lot of organizing, and in close races, or even if it's not super close, I mean, that's what makes the difference, is your ability to effectively manage your team, and for that team to be good enough to make sure, you stay on message and you don't kind of fall off track. We saw what bad staff work looks like. I mean, I would just point out Mitt Romney had some very troubling moments in his campaign. So to me, the fact that Jeb Bush is signing up, kind of the best the GOP has to offer, it kind of game over.
Well, I think that's going to be one of the really interesting facets of 2016 is that there's just so much competition on the Republican side to scoop up the best Republican, strategists on their side. And my colleague Adam Woolner at National Journal wrote a story yesterday about how there's this dearth of political talent in Iowa and 12 Republicans trying to scramble to scoop up all of their talent. So whereas, there are hundreds and hundreds of Democratic operatives who are just itching to work for Hillary as soon as she declares. So there's sort of an imbalance of staffing there.
But that also, to me, I mean, everyone's itching to work for Hillary. Everyone has different opinions about what Hillary should do on certain things. Hillary in 2008 didn't do an incredible job of managing those conflicting voices. So I kind of feel like that could spell trouble as well. If you have too many cooks in the kitchen for what Hillary could do, you could kind of see a campaign that's pulled in all kinds of different directions.
Yeah, she had a superstar team in 2008.
Yeah.
And
look what happened.
Too many cooks.
Too many cooks.
Spoiled the broth.
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? Well, we'll keep an eye on it here on the Bill Press Show. As more candidates jump in, we're going to be curious to find out who's candidate 197. As we roll along. Maybe it's Rand Paul, April 7th. Maybe it's Marco Rubio. I mean, who knows?
I really hope this catches on and people just stop referring to them by name altogether.
Yeah,
and just
exactly.
assign numbers.
That would be wonderful.
Just the numbers.
Well, you heard it here first on the Bill Press Show. Those are the numbers. That's how we're doing it. All right, Emma Roller, staff correspondent for National Journal. Follow her on Twitter at Emma Roller, Emma Roller. I'm Igor Volsky, back with our final moments for this Tuesday here on Bill Press.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
56 minutes after the hour, Igor Volsky here sitting in for Bill Press. I feel like I've said it all about Ted Cruz. I've mispronounced it all in terms of all of our guests.
You've done a phenomenal show today.
Thank you.
We love having you.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure. But listen, seriously though, I'm really intrigued and excited to see how Ted Cruz shapes this debate and whether or not conservatives will finally be able to find a candidate. Maybe it's not Cruz, but find a candidate who sounds like them, especially when it comes to like eliminating the size of government, which is really kind of the point of their platform.
Look, the last two presidential elections, a lot of Republicans came away from it saying, we lost because we didn't have someone who was conservative enough, which I think a lot of people might disagree with, but there are some conservatives who think that they needed someone who was way more conservative. They don't come much more conservative than Ted Cruz.
They don't. And to me, look, we are having a huge demographic shift in this country of more women voting, more African Americans voting, more Hispanics voting. And it's hard to see in an election where all of those blocks and groups come out how a very conservative candidate like Ted Cruz does, because those aren't his voters, and he's not appealing to them. He's appealing to his religious army. All right, folks, that's it for today for this Tuesday edition of the Bill Press Show. I'm back here tomorrow.
Nice.
So be sure to tune in at Igor Volsky on Twitter. I'm Igor Volsky. I'll see you guys tomorrow here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.